The world is changing. This is not a new phenomenon. Change is the one constant in human history. But the pace and scale of change we are witnessing today are unprecedented. We are living through a time of profound global transformation, a period of great upheaval and uncertainty. The old order is crumbling, and a new one is struggling to be born. From the ashes of the old, a new world order is emerging. But what shape will it take? For decades, the world has operated under a system largely shaped by the West, particularly the United States, in the aftermath of World War II. This system, often referred to as the liberal international order, has been credited with ushering in an era of unprecedented peace and prosperity. It has lifted millions out of poverty and fostered remarkable technological advancements. But it has also been criticized for perpetuating inequalities, fueling conflicts, and failing to adequately address global challenges like climate change and pandemics. Today, the liberal international order is under immense strain. The rise of new powers such as China is challenging the West's dominance. The forces of nationalism and populism are eroding global cooperation. Technological disruption is creating both opportunities and anxieties, and the COVID-19 pandemic has exposed the fragility of our interconnected world. The rules-based international system, painstakingly built over decades, is being tested like never before. As we navigate this turbulent and uncertain era, the stakes have never been higher. The choices we make today will shape the world for generations to come. Will we retreat into nationalism and protectionism, leading to a more fragmented and conflict-prone world? Or will we embrace cooperation and multilateralism, working together to address shared challenges and build a more just and sustainable future? The challenges we face are daunting, but they are not insurmountable. To navigate the complexities of the 21st century and build a better future, we need a new approach to international relations, one that is grounded in the principles of cooperation, sustainability, and shared responsibility. This new approach must recognize that the world has changed and that the old ways of doing things are no longer sufficient. This is not a task for governments alone. Individuals, businesses, civil society organizations, and other stakeholders all have a role to play in shaping a more just and sustainable world. We need to move beyond the narrow confines of national self-interest and embrace a more cosmopolitan worldview, recognizing that our fates are interconnected and that we're all part of a global community. In the following sections, we will delve deeper into the forces shaping the New World Order, exploring the historical context, the current challenges, and the potential scenarios for the future. We will examine the role of key actors from nation-states to multinational corporations to individual citizens, and we will consider what steps we can take to shape a world that is more just, equitable, and sustainable for all. To understand our world today, we must journey back, tracing the echoes of empires past. The Roman Empire, stretching from the British Isles to the Euphrates, stands as a testament to this enduring human desire. But Rome, like all empires, eventually crumbled, succumbing to internal decay and external pressures. Its decline ushered in an era of fragmentation in Europe, a time of warring kingdoms and shifting alliances. The Catholic Church provided continuity and a unifying force in a fractured world. The rise of Islam created a new center of power and civilization. The encounter between Christendom and Islam had a profound impact on world history. The voyages of discovery led to the rise of transatlantic trade and European power. The age of colonialism began, reshaping the world through European ambitions. The 20th century dawned with a promise of progress, but it soon descended into the abyss of two world wars, conflicts of unprecedented scale and brutality that shattered the illusion of a stable and predictable world order. The First World War, triggered by a complex web of alliances, imperial rivalries, and nationalist fervor, left millions dead and Europe in ruins. The Treaty of Versailles, intended to bring a lasting peace, instead sowed the seeds of future conflict. The harsh terms imposed on Germany, including crippling reparations and territorial losses, created resentment and instability. The League of Nations, created in the aftermath of the war to prevent future conflicts, proved to be a toothless tiger, lacking the power and the will to enforce its decisions. The rise of fascism in Germany, Italy, and Japan in the 1930s further destabilized the international system. Driven by ideologies of racial superiority and expansionist ambitions, these totalitarian regimes challenged the very foundations of the post-war order. The Second World War, even more devastating than the First, left an indelible scar on the human psyche, demonstrating the horrific consequences of unchecked aggression and the failure of collective security. As the smoke cleared from the battlefields, the world embarked on a new attempt to build a more stable and just international order. The United Nations, founded in 1945 on the ashes of the League of Nations, embodied this aspiration. With a broader membership and a more robust mandate, the UN was tasked with maintaining international peace and security, promoting economic and social development, and upholding human rights. The post-World War II era witnessed the emergence of a new global order, one shaped by the rivalry between the United States and the Soviet Union. The Cold War, as it came to be known, was a period of intense ideological competition, proxy wars, and the ever-present threat of nuclear annihilation. Yet, it was also a time of remarkable technological advancements, economic growth, and the expansion of education and social welfare programs in many parts of the world. The Bretton Woods system, established in 1944, laid the foundation for a new global economic order. The International Monetary Fund and the World Bank, created as part of this system, aimed to promote international financial stability and foster economic development. The General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade, later succeeded by the World Trade Organization, sought to reduce trade barriers and promote free trade. The collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991 marked the end of the Cold War and ushered in what many hoped would be a new world order characterized by peace, democracy, and prosperity. The United States emerged as the sole superpower, and there was a sense that history had reached an endpoint, with liberal democracy as the final form of human government. However, this unipolar moment proved to be fleeting. The forces of globalization, technological change, and the rise of new powers were already reshaping the world, creating both opportunities and challenges for the existing order. The seeds of a new world order were being sown, one characterized by both greater interconnectedness and heightened competition, by the promise of progress and the specter of conflict. The fall of the Berlin Wall in 1989 marked a pivotal moment in human history. The ideological struggle between the capitalist West and the communist East ended, with democracy emerging as the victor. A wave of optimism swept the globe, fueled by the belief in a new era of peace and prosperity. Francis Fukuyama declared this the end of history, with liberal democracy as the final form of government. The United States emerged as the world's sole superpower, facing new opportunities and challenges. The unipolar moment presented both opportunities and challenges. The U.S. had the ability to shape the global agenda, but faced a complex international system. The post-Cold War world did not conform to the optimistic script. Old conflicts resurfaced, and new ones erupted. The peace dividend proved elusive. Ethnic nationalism, religious extremism, and transnational terrorism posed new challenges. The world seemed adrift, searching for a new compass. The institutions created after World War II seemed ill-equipped for the emerging challenges. The world was changing rapidly, driven by globalization, technological innovation, and new powers. The old order was crumbling, but a new one had yet to emerge. The globalization paradox: prosperity and its discontents. Globalization has interconnected economies, societies, and cultures, driven by technology and reduced trade barriers. It has created economic growth and lifted millions out of poverty. However, the benefits are unevenly distributed, widening the gap between rich and poor. The 2008 financial crisis and COVID-19 pandemic exposed globalization's vulnerabilities. Policymakers must create a more inclusive, sustainable model of globalization. Stalemate on the world stage. The limits of outdated institutions. The international institutions that emerged post-World War II were designed for a different era. Created during the US-Soviet rivalry, they aimed to promote peace and economic cooperation. But as the 21st century progressed, their limitations became clear. The rise of new powers like China, India, and Brazil challenged the old order. Yet, these institutions failed to adapt, reflecting outdated power dynamics. The UN Security Council often found itself deadlocked, unable to act decisively. Climate change, pandemics, and cyber warfare required global solutions. But these institutions seemed ill-equipped to address these challenges effectively. Their slow decision-making and lack of enforcement hampered their response. The world needed more agile, representative, and accountable institutions, but achieving meaningful reform proved to be a daunting challenge. Developing countries often viewed these institutions as instruments of Western hegemony. The failure to address global inequality and climate change fueled resentment. These shortcomings undermined their legitimacy in the eyes of many. Technology's double-edged sword: progress and disruption on a global scale. Technological innovation has always driven human history, shaping societies and transforming economies. The 21st century saw rapid technological change in AI, biotech, renewable energy, and digital communications. These advancements promise to improve lives and solve global challenges. The internet connected billions, democratizing information and creating new opportunities. It facilitated education, commerce, and social interaction. However, it also spread misinformation and hate speech. Social media exacerbated polarization and created echo chambers. AI presented both opportunities and risks. It could revolutionize industries and accelerate discovery, but it raised concerns about job displacement and algorithmic bias. AI development raised ethical and societal questions. Rapid technological change challenged governance and regulation. Governments struggled to keep pace with innovations. The challenge was to foster innovation while mitigating risks. The price of protectionism: unraveling the global trade network. Post-World War II, global trade flourished, lifting millions out of poverty. The General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade in 1947 dismantled trade barriers. This interconnectedness fueled unprecedented economic growth. However, benefits were unevenly distributed, causing discontent. Multinational corporations and consumers in developed countries thrived. But some industries faced job losses and economic hardship. The 2008 financial crisis exposed vulnerabilities, fueling backlash. Economic nationalism and protectionism surged. Trade wars symbolized the shifting global order. Countries resorted to tariffs and protectionist measures. These actions threatened to unravel the global trade network. The consequences of retreating from globalization were dire. Protectionism led to higher prices and reduced choice. Tariffs triggered retaliatory measures, escalating tensions. This environment led to uncertainty, volatility, and potential conflict. A trade war bruised the US and China lockhorns. The US, long a champion of free trade, underwent a dramatic shift in its economic policy under the Trump administration, adopting a more confrontational approach towards China, which it accused of unfair trade practices, intellectual property theft, and forced technology transfers. The US, under the banner of America First, imposed tariffs on hundreds of billions of dollars worth of Chinese goods, ranging from solar panels and washing machines to steel and aluminum. China, in turn, retaliated with tariffs of its own, targeting key American exports like soybeans, automobiles, and aircraft. The world watched anxiously as the two economic giants locked horns, their tit-for-tat tariffs threatening to escalate into a full-blown trade war with global ramifications. The underlying tensions between the US and China extended far beyond trade. China's rapid economic rise, its growing military might, and its increasingly assertive foreign policy had challenged the US's long-standing position as the world's sole superpower. The trade war, therefore, became both a symptom and a catalyst of a broader geopolitical rivalry between the two countries, a struggle for power and influence that played out on multiple fronts, from the South China Sea to the World Trade Organization. The trade war between the US and China had far-reaching consequences, not only for the two countries directly involved, but also for the global economy as a whole. Businesses faced uncertainty as supply chains were disrupted, and consumers saw prices rise on a range of goods. The International Monetary Fund warned that the trade war was a drag on global growth, dampening investment and undermining confidence. Moreover, the dispute threatened to erode the rules-based trading system that had underpinned global prosperity for decades. Tit for tat: escalation and retaliation in the global arena. The US-China trade war, while the most prominent and consequential, was not an isolated phenomenon. Across the globe, protectionist measures proliferated, as countries increasingly resorted to tariffs and other trade barriers to protect domestic industries and gain an advantage over their rivals. This resurgence of protectionism, driven by a complex mix of economic nationalism, geopolitical rivalry, and domestic political pressures, threatened to unravel the web of interconnectedness that had come to define the global economy. The European Union, traditionally a bastion of free trade, found itself embroiled in trade disputes with both the US and China. The Trump administration imposed tariffs on European steel and aluminum, citing national security concerns, and threatened to do the same on European automobiles. The EU, in turn, retaliated with tariffs on American goods like bourbon, motorcycles, and orange juice. Meanwhile, the EU clashed with China over allegations of dumping, state subsidies, and forced technology transfers. Beyond the major powers, smaller countries also felt the ripple effects of this global trade war. As tariffs disrupted supply chains and increased the cost of imported goods, businesses and consumers in developing countries, often more reliant on global trade, faced particular hardship. The World Bank warned that the trade war could push millions of people into poverty, especially in regions heavily dependent on agricultural exports. This tit-for-tat escalation of tariffs and trade barriers created a climate of uncertainty and unpredictability in the global economy. Businesses delayed investments, consumers held back on spending, and the engine of global growth sputtered. The rules-based trading system, already under strain, seemed increasingly fragile, vulnerable to the whims of nationalist leaders and the shifting sands of global power. Collateral damage: the global economy caught in the crossfire. Trade wars left a trail of collateral damage impacting businesses, consumers, and the global economy. Tariffs imposed in one part of the world had ripple effects far beyond the countries directly involved. Businesses faced uncertainty as the cost of imported goods rose, and consumers saw prices increase. The agricultural sector, heavily reliant on global trade, was particularly hard hit. Farmers saw their export markets shrink and prices for their products plummet. Governments resorted to subsidies and protectionism, further distorting global markets. Trade wars also had a chilling effect on investment and innovation. Businesses became more risk-averse, delaying investment decisions and scaling back expansion plans. This decline in investment threatened to undermine long-term economic growth and job creation. The confrontational approach to trade undermined trust and cooperation between nations. The International Monetary Fund and the World Bank warned of the dangers of protectionism. The global economy faced a precarious future, vulnerable to the destabilizing effects of trade wars. The Global South, a tapestry of perspectives on a multipolar world. The Global South, encompassing diverse regions, shares a history of colonialism and a desire for economic equality. Many see China's rise as a positive shift, offering new opportunities. However, there are concerns about economic dependency and debt. The Global South's youthful population demands political participation and social justice. Despite challenges, these countries are active shapers of their destiny. Their voices are crucial for addressing global challenges and building a sustainable world. The Global South is poised to play a significant role in the emerging world order. Navigating the unknown, the future of the world order in flux. The world stands at a crossroads. The familiar contours of the post-Cold War order with its illusion of stability and predictability have faded, replaced by a landscape of uncertainty and rapid transformation. The forces reshaping global politics, economics, and technology are accelerating, creating both unprecedented opportunities and profound risks. The future, far from being preordained, is a canvas upon which the choices of nations, individuals, and institutions will leave their mark. Predicting the future, particularly in times of such profound change, is a fool's errand. However, by examining the key drivers of change, the underlying trends, and the potential for disruption, we can develop scenarios that help us imagine different possible futures. These scenarios are not predictions. Rather, they are tools for thinking about the future, for challenging our assumptions, and for preparing for a range of possibilities. The future of the world order is not a binary choice between a utopian vision of peace and cooperation, and a dystopian nightmare of conflict and chaos. The reality, as always, is likely to be more nuanced, a complex tapestry woven from threads of progress and setbacks, of cooperation and competition, of order and disorder. The choices we make today, both individually and collectively, will determine which threads dominate the tapestry of the future. In the following chapter, we will explore 5 distinct but interconnected scenarios for the future of the world order. Each scenario represents a plausible trajectory, shaped by different assumptions about the key drivers of change. By considering these alternative futures, we can better understand the stakes involved, the potential consequences of our choices, and the agency we possess to shape a world that reflects our values and aspirations. Scenario 1. A multipolar mosaic. A world of coalitions and competition. Imagine a world where power is more diffuse, no single nation or bloc holding absolute dominance. This is the essence of a multipolar world, where multiple centers of power compete and cooperate. The United States, while still a major player, would no longer be the sole superpower. Alliances would be fluid, shifting in response to specific issues and challenges. Coalitions would form and dissolve based on shared interests, with countries aligning on issues like trade, climate change, and cybersecurity. International institutions would continue to play a vital role in facilitating dialogue and mediating disputes. This multipolar world would be characterized by both opportunities and challenges. The diffusion of power could lead to a more balanced and representative international system. The rise of new powers could bring new ideas, resources, and perspectives to global problem solving. However, a multipolar world could also be more volatile and unpredictable. Navigating this complex environment would require deft diplomacy and a willingness to compromise. Building and sustaining effective coalitions would be paramount. Success would depend on the ability to navigate complexity, build trust, and forge common ground. Scenario 2. The return of the Iron Curtain. A new bipolar Cold War. The rivalry between the United States and China casts a long shadow over the 21st century. This scenario envisions a world divided into 2 competing blocs, one led by the US and its allies, the other by China and its partners. Ideological differences, economic competition, and geopolitical rivalry would fuel a global struggle for influence. Proxy conflicts, cyber warfare, economic espionage, and a global arms race would become the norm. A new Iron Curtain, while perhaps less visible than its Cold War predecessor, would nonetheless divide the world. Scenario 3. Fortress World. The rise of regional blocs and closed doors. Imagine a world where the forces of globalization retreat, where walls go up, both literally and metaphorically. This is the essence of Fortress World, a scenario in which global interconnectedness gives way to regionalization, as countries prioritize self-sufficiency, national security, and the protection of their own citizens over international cooperation. In this scenario, disillusionment with globalization, fueled by economic inequality, job losses, and a perceived loss of sovereignty, would lead to a backlash against free trade, immigration, and multilateral institutions. Countries, prioritizing their own narrow interests, would retreat behind their borders, seeking to shield their economies and societies from the perceived threats of a globalized world. Regional blocs, often organized around shared economic interests, security concerns, or cultural affinities, would emerge as the dominant actors in this fragmented world. The European Union, if it could overcome its internal divisions, might become a model for this regionalization trend, seeking to preserve its economic and political clout by strengthening its internal cohesion and reducing its dependence on external partners. In this fortress world, the global commons, the shared resources and spaces upon which all humanity depends would suffer from neglect. Climate change, pandemics, and other transnational challenges would be more difficult to address, as cooperation and coordination between regional blocs would be limited. Innovation and technological progress, while perhaps continuing within regional silos, would be hampered by the lack of global collaboration. The fortress world, while perhaps offering a sense of security and control in the short term, would ultimately be a less prosperous, less innovative, and more fragile world. Scenario 4. Globalization rebooted, a more equitable and sustainable path? The backlash against globalization, while potent, does not necessarily spell the end of interconnectedness. This scenario envisions a globalization rebooted, a world where the excesses and inequities of the previous era of globalization are addressed, paving the way for a more equitable, sustainable, and inclusive form of global integration. In this scenario, the COVID-19 pandemic, while devastating in its immediate impact, would serve as a wake-up call, highlighting the interconnectedness of the world and the need for global cooperation. Governments, recognizing the limitations of nationalism and protectionism, would work together to reform global institutions, strengthen multilateralism, and address shared challenges like climate change, pandemics, and economic inequality. This rebooted globalization would prioritize sustainable development, ensuring that economic growth is environmentally sound and socially inclusive. International trade, while remaining a vital engine of growth, would be governed by fairer rules that protect workers' rights, promote environmental sustainability, and prevent a race to the bottom on labor and environmental standards. Technological innovation, rather than exacerbating inequality, would be harnessed to address global challenges and to create opportunities for all. Renewable energy, precision agriculture, telemedicine, and other transformative technologies would be deployed to reduce poverty, improve healthcare, and mitigate the effects of climate change. The globalization rebooted scenario offers a hopeful vision of the future, one where global interconnectedness is a force for good, driving progress, prosperity, and sustainability for all. Section 5. The Fractured World. Descent into Chaos and Conflict. The most pessimistic scenario envisions a world where the fabric of international order unravels completely, leading to a descent into chaos, conflict, and instability. This is the fractured world, a scenario in which the trends towards nationalism, protectionism, and great power rivalry reach their most extreme conclusions. In this scenario, trust between nations erodes completely, replaced by suspicion, fear, and a zero-sum mentality. Multilateral institutions, rendered irrelevant by the resurgence of national egoism, collapse under the weight of their own irrelevance. The rules-based international order, painstakingly constructed over decades, is swept aside by a tidal wave of nationalism, protectionism, and militarism. Armed conflicts, once contained by the norms of the post-World War II order, erupt with greater frequency and intensity. Climate change, unchecked by global cooperation, unleashes a cascade of environmental disasters, exacerbating resource scarcity, triggering mass migrations, and fueling further conflict. The global economy, shattered by trade wars, protectionism, and the collapse of global supply chains, plunges into a prolonged depression. The fractured world is a dystopian vision of the future, a world where the veneer of civilization has worn thin, exposing the raw instincts of survival and self-preservation. It is a world where the bonds of empathy, compassion, and shared humanity have frayed, leaving behind a bleak landscape of fear, violence, and despair. It is a future we must strive to avoid, a cautionary tale of what happens when the forces of division and destruction are allowed to prevail. Shaping the future agency and action in an uncertain world. The future, while uncertain, is not predetermined. We are not passive bystanders in the unfolding drama of the 21st century. We are active participants, our choices and actions shaping the trajectory of events. The scenarios outlined above are not predictions. They are possibilities, each with its own internal logic and potential consequences. The future we inhabit will be the one we collectively create. To navigate this era of unprecedented change and uncertainty, we need a new mindset, one that embraces complexity, recognizes our interconnectedness, and prioritizes long-term thinking over short-term gains. We need to move beyond the zero-sum mentality that has characterized so much of international relations recognizing that our fates are intertwined and that cooperation, not conflict, is the only path to a sustainable and prosperous future. This requires a renewed commitment to multilateralism, to strengthening the institutions and norms that facilitate dialogue, cooperation, and the peaceful resolution of disputes. It requires investing in diplomacy, in building bridges of understanding across cultures and ideologies. And it requires a willingness to confront the root causes of conflict and instability, from poverty and inequality to climate change and resource scarcity. The future of the world order is not a spectator sport. It is a call to action, a challenge to shape a world that reflects our values and aspirations. The stakes have never been higher, but neither have the opportunities. The future is ours to create, and the time to act is now. The power of many revitalizing multilateralism for a new era. The challenges facing humanity in the 21st century, climate change, pandemics, nuclear proliferation, cyber warfare, to name but a few, are global in scope and require global solutions. No single nation, however powerful, can hope to address these challenges alone. The only way forward is through cooperation, through a renewed commitment to multilateralism, to strengthening the institutions and norms that facilitate dialogue, coordination, and collective action. The multilateral system, while imperfect, has a proven track record of success. From the Bretton Woods institutions that helped to rebuild the global economy after World War II to the Montreal Protocol that phased out ozone-depleting substances, multilateralism has delivered tangible benefits to billions of people around the world. However, the multilateral system, like any human construct, is not static. It must evolve and adapt to meet the challenges of a changing world. Revitalizing multilateralism for the 21st century requires several key reforms. First, the decision-making structures of key international institutions, such as the UN Security Council, must be made more representative and inclusive, reflecting the growing weight of emerging economies and the global south in world affairs. Second, the capacity of international organizations to respond quickly and effectively to crises, from pandemics to natural disasters, must be enhanced. Third, the funding mechanisms for multilateral initiatives must be made more sustainable and predictable, reducing reliance on voluntary contributions and ensuring that resources are available when and where they are most needed. Beyond institutional reform, revitalizing multilateralism also requires a shift in mindset, a recognition that cooperation, not competition, is the only path to a more peaceful, prosperous, and sustainable future. This means embracing dialogue over confrontation, finding common ground on shared challenges, and building trust through transparency and accountability. Prosperity for all, rethinking development in an age of interdependence. For decades, the dominant paradigm of development has been one of economic growth, measured primarily by indicators like GDP. While economic growth is undoubtedly important, it is not an end in itself. True development must be holistic, encompassing not only economic progress but also social justice, environmental sustainability, and human well-being. It must be about creating societies where everyone has the opportunity to thrive, where no one is left behind. In an era of globalization and technological disruption, the traditional model of development, often based on a linear progression from developing to developed status, is no longer adequate. The challenges of poverty, inequality, climate change, and rapid technological change are interconnected and require integrated solutions. We need a new development paradigm, one that recognizes the interdependence of nations and the need for collective action to address shared challenges. This new development paradigm must prioritize investments in human capital, in education, healthcare, and social safety nets, ensuring that everyone has the opportunity to reach their full potential. It must promote sustainable consumption and production patterns, decoupling economic growth from environmental degradation. And it must foster innovation, particularly in areas like renewable energy, sustainable agriculture, and climate-resilient infrastructure, enabling developing countries to leapfrog outdated technologies and embrace a more sustainable development path. Achieving this vision of prosperity for all requires a fundamental shift in the global development architecture. Developed countries must fulfill their commitments to provide development assistance, ensuring that aid is effective, transparent, and aligned with the priorities of developing countries. International financial institutions, such as the World Bank and the IMF, must reform their lending practices, promoting sustainable development and debt sustainability rather than imposing austerity measures that exacerbate poverty and inequality. Harmony, not hegemony, peaceful coexistence in a multipolar world. The world is becoming increasingly multipolar, with power more diffuse and new centers of influence emerging. This shift in the global balance of power, while unsettling for some, presents an opportunity to move beyond the zero-sum mentality that has often characterized international relations and to embrace a more cooperative and inclusive approach to global governance. Peaceful coexistence in a multipolar world requires a recognition of our shared humanity, a willingness to embrace diversity, and a commitment to resolving disputes through dialogue and diplomacy rather than through coercion or force. It requires a respect for international law and the principles enshrined in the UN Charter, including the sovereign equality of states, the peaceful settlement of disputes, and the prohibition on the use of force in international relations. Rather than seeking to contain or confront rising powers, the existing powers should embrace a more inclusive approach, inviting new actors to participate in shaping the rules and norms of the international system. This requires a willingness to share power and influence, to listen to the perspectives of others, and to find common ground on issues of mutual concern. It also requires a recognition that a multipolar world does not have to be a zero-sum game, that cooperation and competition are not mutually exclusive. Building a more harmonious and peaceful multipolar world also requires addressing the root causes of conflict and instability. This includes tackling global challenges like climate change, pandemics, and terrorism, which know no borders and require collective action to address effectively. It also means addressing issues like poverty, inequality, and lack of access to education and healthcare, which can fuel resentment, extremism, and conflict. The future is not something that happens to us, it is something we create. The choices we make today, both individually and collectively, will determine the kind of world we bequeath to future generations. Will it be a world riven by conflict, inequality, and environmental degradation? Or will it be a world where peace, justice, and sustainability prevail? The answer lies in our hands. Building a better future requires a fundamental shift in our thinking, a recognition that we are all part of a global community, our fates interconnected, our destinies intertwined. It requires moving beyond the narrow confines of national self-interest and embracing a more cosmopolitan worldview, one that recognizes our shared humanity and our shared responsibility for the planet we inhabit. This is not a task for governments alone. Individuals, businesses, civil society organizations, and other actors all have a role to play in shaping a more just and sustainable world. We can start by educating ourselves about global issues, engaging in dialogue across cultures, and supporting organizations that are working to make a difference. We can make conscious choices as consumers, supporting businesses that operate ethically and sustainably, and we can hold our leaders accountable, demanding that they prioritize policies that promote peace, justice, and environmental protection. The challenges we face are daunting, but they are not insurmountable. The human spirit is capable of great things when we come together with a shared purpose. The future is not preordained, it is ours to create. Let us choose wisely, let us act boldly, and let us build a world worthy of our highest aspirations. As we stand at this critical juncture in human history, the weight of our choices, both individually and collectively, has never been heavier. The future, far from being a predetermined destination, is a canvas upon which our actions, our values, and our aspirations will leave an indelible mark. The world order, as we have explored, is not a static entity, but a dynamic process, constantly shaped and reshaped by the forces of history, ideology, economics, and technology. The scenarios we have outlined, from the multipolar mosaic to the fractured world, represent a spectrum of possibilities, each with its own internal logic and potential consequences. The future we inhabit will not be the result of fate, but of the choices we make today. Will we succumb to the siren song of nationalism, retreating behind walls of fear and suspicion? Or will we embrace the challenges and opportunities of a multipolar world, forging a new era of cooperation, innovation, and shared prosperity? The answers to these questions lie not in the stars, but in ourselves. The future is not something that happens to us, It is something we create through our actions, our beliefs, and our unwavering commitment to a better world. The challenges we face are daunting, but they are not insurmountable. Humanity has overcome seemingly insurmountable challenges before, and we can do so again. To navigate the complexities of the 21st century and build a world worthy of our highest aspirations, we must move beyond the limitations of old paradigms, embrace new ways of thinking, and forge a new global consciousness. This is not a task for the faint of heart, but for those who dare to dream of a better future and are willing to work tirelessly to make that dream a reality. In the face of global challenges that often seem overwhelming in their scale and complexity, it is easy to feel a sense of powerlessness, to believe that our individual actions are insignificant in the grand scheme of things. But this is a fallacy, a dangerous abdication of our shared responsibility to shape a better future. The truth is that each of us, however humble our station in life, possesses the power to make a difference. The power of one resides in the choices we make every day. It resides in the products we buy, the companies we support, the causes we champion, and the votes we cast. It resides in our willingness to educate ourselves about global issues, to engage in respectful dialogue across cultures, and to challenge injustice and inequality wherever we encounter it. The power of one is amplified when we join forces with others, when we come together as communities, as nations, and as a global community united by our shared humanity and our common destiny. The movements for social justice, for environmental protection, for peace and disarmament, these are all testaments to the power of collective action, the power of individuals coming together to demand a better future. Never underestimate the power of your voice, your actions, and your unwavering belief in the possibility of a better world. For it is in the courage and compassion of individuals, multiplied countless times over, that the true hope for a just and sustainable future resides. The world is calling out for a new generation of leaders, thinkers and doers who dare to challenge conventional wisdom and who are willing to stand up for what they believe in. This is a call to arms, not to the battlefields of old, but to the front lines of progress where ideas, compassion and commitment to a better future prevail. That's all for today's From Trenzy Fam. If you found this video informative, be sure to hit that like button, subscribe to our channel for more thought-provoking content, and share this video with your friends. We'll see you in the next trend.